Okay, in this video we're gonna be looking at another fundamental thing of fundamental importance and usefulness that you can do with programming languages, which is maths. We're gonna start off by looking at some very simple mathematics using numbers. We can add them, subtract them, etc. here in the live shell. First of all, let's restart the shell so that we have all our variables reset. And here we go. Now, of course, in Python you can do simple addition and subtraction. This can be done very easily by simply writing 5, let's say, plus 5. We simply have the first number, the symbol, the operator, the second number, press enter, and we get the answer. This works with subtraction, multiplication, and division. As you can see, all of the answers are correct. They will always be correct, although Python is a bit slightly peculiar when it comes to rounding, but we'll look at that at a later moment. These few basic operations are only a very small part of what Python can do when it comes to math. Another simple thing that is maybe useful to look at is, for example, raising things to the power of something. If we want 4 squared, because we programmers are very lazy and we don't want to write 4 times 4, we simply write 4 double asterisk 2. Now in Python, the double asterisk means to the power of. It's like the little up arrow thing on your calculator, which raises numbers to the power of something. If we press enter, we get 16. 4 squared, 16. Now, what we're gonna do is use our knowledge of variables and apply it to maths. Before we do that, we have to think about what type of variable we're going to use when working with numbers, because strings are only arrays of symbols or letters with no actual meaning. We need a new variable type. There are 2 variable types that can be used, or that you have to use when working with maths or working with numbers. There's 1, the integer, and 2, the floats. Now, integers is a name you probably know, or a word you've heard in the math lessons. Integers are all whole numbers, positive and negative. But integers are not fractions, so only 1, 2, 3, but not 1/2, 1.33, so no fractions or decimals. Floats, on the other hand, are all numbers that have decimals, or for example 16.5, or 16.001, or 17 thirds, or the square root of 3. All numbers that are not whole numbers. Depending on what type of numbers you're adding or subtracting or dividing, you will want to work either with integers or with floats. Now, let us start off by only looking at integers, to keep it all simple. To create an integer variable, we basically do the same thing as we would do to create a string. We type the variable name, let us stick with x because we love x so much, is equal to, and now if you recall from the previous videos, to create a string we would open our quotation marks and add the string. In this case, we don't want to create a string, we want to create an integer variable. So all we have to do is give x its value as an integer, 5. 5 is a whole number, and if we press enter, Python automatically recognizes that 5 is an integer and creates x as an integer variable. So as a variable of type integer. And now we can use x as we've done before. We can use x as a placeholder for 5. So if we go x plus 5, we still get 10 because x is equal to 5. This is very useful when substituting into formulas, etc., when working with a lot of numbers, and will of course come in very handy in the future. Surely we can also use the x to subtract from it. Let's just see, x minus 2, that should be 3, and we can divide x by 2. Let's not do that. We can multiply x by 3, and we get 15. We can work with x any way we like. Now, just to once more clarify the difference between the integer variable type and the string variable type. Now, let us create another variable, y, a string variable type. We put the variable name is equal to, set it equal to, and we add our quotation marks to create a string. We call it hello. Press enter, and there we go. Our string variable. Now let us observe what happens if we multiply y by 5. Okay, what the hell? Now, this is very simple. Python looks at this and says y. Okay, y equals hello. So what it does it gives you hello 5 times. Math does not work with string variables, and that's why we have to use integers or floats when we work with math. So if we have y is equal to 5 instead of 5 in quotation marks, and we go y times 5, we get 25. To check what type of variable you have, there's a very simple inbuilt functions. If you remember correctly, inbuilt functions are small Python programs that are already in Python, saved somewhere in the Python directory. Now, the one that we need, the one that will help us determine what type our variable is, if we don't know, is called, surprise surprise, type. We call the function type like we would call print, and then in the brackets add the parameters. Now the type function only needs one parameter, and that's the variable or the number or the value whose type you would like to test. Let us see what type x is. We press enter, and it gives us x is class integer. Ignore the class for now and just look at the int. Int stands for integer. And yes, we know that y is an integer. If we go back and make y back to 5 in quotation marks, and we go type y, oh, we get type as a string, str. This is very useful if you're not quite sure what you're dealing with, and you're not completely convinced what type of variable to use, or whatever. You can also test the type of an actual value when it's not assigned to a variable. So let's test what type 100 is, or 1000. And it gives you, it's a class integer. It's an integer. Now, remember what integers are. If we put in 5.5, it is a variable type float, because it is a fraction, it has a decimal, and it's no longer an integer, but a float. Okay,